Hello and welcome to week 7 of How to Teach at Buddha Dharma University. And this week our topic is providing feedback. So we will begin with our activating strategy. And for this, I'm going to have you consider what types of feedback you are accustomed to receiving. So this can be feedback that you receive at work, that you've received from your guiding teacher perhaps, through online courses that maybe you've received through Buddha Dharma University, anything. So what kind of feedback are you accustomed to receiving? And do you find them helpful and effective? Why or why not? So as usual, pause the video here. Please give some thought to these questions and write them out, and we will, once you're done, hit play, and then we will continue our lesson. So before I begin the lecture, I want to emphasize here that you want to make sure that you've read the articles that have been assigned before watching this video. I'll be referring to some of the content specifically, but not elaborating on them, so it will be helpful to you to have some familiarity with the content of the articles ahead of time. So providing kind feedback is something that is mentioned in the article. So it doesn't take much time spent in the study of Buddhism to realize that compassion and kindness are central to the teachings that the Buddha offered. The crossover between Buddhist philosophy and in the instruction of educators of using compassion and kindness in all aspects of what we do is something that really caught my attention right away when I first began studying Buddhism and when I first started taking courses to help me get my training in as a public educator. One of the misconceptions of kindness, and this is something that is pervasive in our culture, is that kindness is everybody gets a medal. Nobody gets criticized or critiqued. So one of the things that is mentioned in one of the articles here is that kindness doesn't mean avoiding critique. And this is something that I felt was really important to emphasize here. Culturally, we have this misunderstanding that being nice, being kind means we don't ever offer critique. Now, I am going to make the distinction between a critique and a criticism. And there is a great example of a critique versus a criticism right in the quote that I've got on the screen here. So the quoted first example of a critique here is a great example of like what a kind critique might be. What kind of details, facts, examples, or illustrations would help your reader better understand your position? So this is giving the person, the author of whatever essay this feedback is for, something to think about. It is pointing them in the direction of something that was not present in what they presented that probably could be in order to help improve it. So that is a helpful critique. This following quote is what we would call a criticism. You need to show more effort in your writing if you want readers to value your position. So how we phrase feedback definitely affects how it is received. So if you think about, if you've ever received a critique, you know how that feels. It is often something that points to a flaw, makes us feel like maybe we're being attacked. It may not be intended that way, but it certainly sometimes can feel that way. So it is really important to be cognizant of the wording that we use. I will say honestly that when I am critiquing in my classroom, I tend to avoid words like wrong, incorrect, any of those kinds of things. Now, there are some people who might roll their eyes at that. And maybe if you're working with adults, that might not be as necessary, but I am willing to bet that most of us have had the experience and have been affected by critiques rather than criticisms in school, and we all have this aversion of being wrong and of being criticized. And being told that we are wrong about something stings a little bit more because we've got that negative association with that type of criticism. In the interest of being kind and allowing people to feel more open to receiving feedback, I have personally found it much more helpful to avoid those words so that my students are open to change, to changing something that they've done. Rather than feeling like they're being browbeaten for a response they've given, I try to give something that looks a little more like constructive suggestions. So it's just something for you to think about as you are giving individuals feedback. So this can be, standing in front of your learning group, and someone gives an answer that maybe has, some good elements, but maybe has missed the mark on certain things. In those moments, it's helpful to tell them, oh, that wasn't right, right? However, so I'll give an example of things that I will do in my classroom. I will often point out, oh, hey, I really liked this response because you did X, Y, Z. Maybe they remembered to spell out the word with the accent on it. That's all it takes. That's all it takes for praise, right? I really like this response because of this. I'm wondering how you might improve this response. That is something that I might say. How could this response be a little bit more accurate? I did not use the word wrong. I didn't use the word incorrect. I pointed out positives, and I'm also giving them a direction. And I find that when I reword questions that way, students can often self-correct and are willing to enthusiastically self-correct the responses. So it does make a difference how that feedback is given to a student. It's always possible to frame a criticism to make it a critique instead, and I just gave some examples. And here are some other examples. This can be done through offering suggestions, which I just mentioned. Try rewording this by using simpler words. This will help readers grasp your meaning more easily. This is an example of a critique that I gave one of my upper level French students who was trying to be all fancy with their words and therefore muddling the meaning of what it was they were trying to communicate. So instead of saying, write better, or I didn't understand this, I gave them a suggestion, which pointed out where the issues lay so that they know what it is they need to change. Ask questions, okay, as in the example that is given through the article. And if a correction is needed, point them in the right direction. An explanation of a concept that I really like is on page X, paragraph number, in the article that was assigned. Please let me know if you'd like help with it. And this is an example of something that I've also done for my upper level students who might have been trying to refer to an event in a story that we've read and they need to write about it, or a vocabulary word or whatever. I don't exactly remember what the situation was when I offered this feedback to them, but it is okay to point them in the direction of where they can find the answer, a good response, a good example, so that they can refer to that and use it to their advantage to help them reframe what it was that they were saying. So these are all ways of providing feedback that is helpful, that is kind, and that is considered, and is designed to benefit the learning of the person or the people that you are working with. The next thing that I want to talk about is what is mentioned in there, timeliness. So this may not be as much of an issue for many of you who are running like guided meditation and learning groups or book studies. However, if you are ever in a situation where you are running a class, maybe you've been asked to present a class for BDU, for example. Simply put, just do your gosh darn best. Remember to be kind to yourself also, because the guidelines tell us that we have 24 to 48 hours to really make that, impact in a timely way. And they're right. The sooner you can offer feedback, the better it is. The more, I guess effective is the word it is. If you think about professors or teachers that you had when you were in high school who would assign an essay and maybe get it back to you a month later, I'll be honest, that's me sometimes. The feedback they give doesn't resonate as strongly because you've moved past that essay and what was being covered when that essay was assigned and when you were writing that essay. So the impact of the suggestions, the critiques, the etc. don't resonate as strongly because it's been such a long time. But we're going to be really honest here, or I'm going to be really honest here. When it comes to quizzes, short assignments like homeworks, I can give feedback pretty quickly. But when it comes to longer assignments like essays, sometimes I will ask students to record them speaking about something. Those take time. And if you have ever been in an educational setting, you know that essays take a longer time. Much more time to go through because we're reading it, we're thinking about it, we're trying to give thoughtful feedback. You have a rubric that goes with it if you're a high school teacher. It's a lot of work. It takes time. Same thing with a spoken passage and oral response. So, we also have other lives. We have home lives. We have our hobbies and obligations outside of work and outside of our temples, etc. So sometimes feedback is a little bit slower in coming. It is important to remember that these guidelines are offered for public school teachers, and even public school teachers have a hard time meeting that 24 to 48 hour window. Like I said, sometimes I can, sometimes I can't, and it's okay. We do our best. We do what we can. I go through my work knowing that timely feedback is best. When it's possible, I offer it. And when it's not possible, I do apologize to my students because they ask me for it. But sometimes it's one of those it is what it is things. So timely feedback, yes, definitely. It does matter. It makes a difference. We try to do it whenever we can, but sometimes it is difficult and it's not possible, and we need to be forgiving of ourselves when it's not. I hope that's helpful to you. So let's see. As long as you're and just one last thought before I kind of close things off for this week. One of the things you want to also think about is that a kind and considered response is really kind of timeless. So even if you are a little bit late in giving feedback, if the feedback you're giving is less "this was wrong," period, and more, "Hey, how about this idea? What if you were to look at this? See what direction this takes you into." Those kinds of responses are timeless versus the "hey, this was just wrong," because that doesn't inform anybody of anything. Whereas something that's a little more considered, grounded in kindness, consideration, and compassion tends to also be a little less time sensitive. So that's just something else to think about. So that if you are late giving feedback, if it's a kind, considered, thoughtful response, it's usually withstands the test of time a little bit better. I hope that's helpful to you. So for our quiz. Make sure you've read through the articles that have been assigned, and you will be asked for some detailed responses about the different methods of providing feedback that are mentioned. So you're definitely going to want to have read through that article. So that closes off this week's lecture. I will see you for week 8 next week, which is your last instructor video that you'll have to watch. Thank you.